Portions of the following program may have been pre-recorded.
The following program's views, claims, or ideas may not reflect those of WSRR Radio or StylesRebelRadio.com.
Good morning, Cleveland, and welcome back to Behind Enemy Lines. This is the #1 sports show in Cleveland out of Pittsburgh here on WSRR Radio. Now, you may be confused if you're a weekly listener. You're like, who is this introducing the show? It's usually Lucas doing this. Where is he? Well, Lucas is in the sunny state of Florida right now, but don't worry, you'll be hearing from him in the second half of this episode. You will be hearing his takes on the Steelers and Browns matchup, where unfortunately for you guys, the Browns lost this one, but it was a great game. As a Steelers fan, I was very happy to see that one. Both me and Lucas were at that game, so we have differing opinions and differing experiences, so we'll definitely get into that later on the show, but we got a lot to talk about today. First thing I'd say is the Heisman Trophy happened Saturday night. Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner of 2024, kind of controversial. I personally thought it should have been Ashton Jeanty, but obviously what Travis Hunter is doing is pretty remarkable and unprecedented, so I'm not upset that you give it to him, but I think you're going to look back and see what Ashton Jeanty was doing and the numbers that he was putting up. Like, man, he should have been the Heisman this year. He was doing things that have never been seen before since guys like Barry Sanders. And another thing about Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter is one of them's playing in the college football playoffs. I know it's a team sport, but Heisman's, I think this is the first year you're having this expanded playoffs. I think if you have a Heisman, he has to be that good where his team is excellent enough where they can make the playoffs. That's just my opinion. I look at past Heismans and they're guys like Robert Griffin III. He didn't win a national championship, but if there were playoffs happening when he was the Heisman, he would have been in it. Guys that I think of like perennial college football players are guys that would have been in an expanded playoffs if it had happened during their era. So that's another take I have on it. And the last thing, I know I mentioned it, I think 2 episodes ago, the Oregon Duck said on the Pat McAfee show, snaps ain't a stat though. Yes, Travis Hunter is going to be an excellent NFL player. He's going to be playing on Sundays. He's probably going to be a great cornerback in the league. But I think we played too much into this. How much are we playing? How much snaps are we on the field for? It's super impressive. He has a great tank. He's a freaky athlete, but Ashton Jeanty, he's just different, man. I think it should have been him. But congratulations to Travis Hunter. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do in the Alamo Bowl, but I'm more looking forward to seeing this college football playoff. I think it's going to be very interesting. Now, there's another thing. We get a little unhinged on this show sometimes. We talk about some weird stuff. And this is something that, it's not sports related. We're just hard pivot here. Have you guys seen these drones? These drones in New Jersey. If you haven't seen them, look it up on Twitter, look it up on Google. Stuff is getting weird out here, folks. I don't know what exactly is going on, but just take a look for yourself. Apparently, these are SUV-sized drones. What do I think this is? I honestly have no clue. I hope it's us or aliens. I hope it's not another country. I think that'd be the most scary. But these are unmanned drones, apparently, the size of SUVs to the size of buses. I'm like, that sounds like an airplane to me. That sounds like a helicopter. I don't know. I'd say you look into it yourself. But I think things are getting a little strange right now. Just the world in general. I think 2024 was a little too calm. I think 2025 is going to get real weird. You're going to start seeing these drones more and more. And hopefully we'll find out what they mean and what they're here for. But they've been seen in New Jersey, lots of states across the country. I've heard a lot of different theories. You can look into them yourself. Some people are saying that they're looking for like nuclear weapons that may have gone lost. I think it's all bizarre. And congressmen and people in government are like, we don't know where this is coming from. The FBI is like, we don't know where this is coming from. I just think it's very questionable. And I don't know. If you saw one of these drones, what would you do? If I saw one, I live in Pittsburgh, so it's a little different. If I lived in the middle of nowhere and I had a gun, I'd probably shoot at these drones. What are you going to do? Just let these things fly over you? I guess it's the size of an SUV. You're not going to really do anything. So maybe that's not really possible. But I do think that I would be very concerned, and I'd be staying away from these drones. But if I was in the middle of nowhere, I don't know. I'd take a look. I'd see what I can do. You got to bring these things down. I don't get why the country isn't doing it. I think I've seen videos. I mean, it's very tough online nowadays, especially on Twitter, since Elon Musk took it over. It's very tough to know what stuff is true. They added community notes, so you kind of know that there's some fact checking, but then you see videos and it's like this jet chasing after this drone. I'm like, I don't know if that's real. But you can look into that stuff. I don't know. I used to think Twitter was a great search engine. Nowadays, you see tweets from like 2022, 2023. I try to find stuff for this show, try to see what people are saying online about, Travis Hunter, and I'm seeing stuff from years ago, or I'm seeing stuff about like people's bets. It used to be, you used to be able to find good information on Twitter, and now it's just not the case. So here's another hard pivot in this final couple minutes here. I know it's the fantasy football playoff season. I'm in 4 fantasy football leagues. I've made 2 out of the 4. 50%. I don't know. Do you think that's good? I personally am disappointed in this year. I'm disappointed in my performance. I think you got to at least go in 3 out of the 4. Now, my biggest mistake this year, I drafted Brandon Ayuk in 3 out of my 4 leagues. We made the playoff in one of them, so it worked out in that situation, but I think that was the dagger. Another thing that I made a big mistake in a league that I missed the playoffs in, the league that I care the most about, I drafted a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds. I drafted Tyreek Hill with the 2nd overall pick. Then I drafted Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, and then the 4th round I drafted DJ Moore. I mean, you kill your team on draft night. You make it or you break it on draft night. And I broke it. I broke the team officially. It wasn't a good year. I feel like this year wasn't as unpredictable as past years. I think you could look at this. I mean, obviously I think with running backs, it was unpredictable for sure. I mean, you got guys like Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall, who I don't think lived up to their potential. And wide receivers, I think that was pretty spot on before the year. I think you kind of knew going in who were the guys. Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. I think Tyreek Hill would have had a great season if Tua didn't miss a majority of the middle part of the year. They didn't have good options. It was Skylar Thompson. Then they went to Tyler Huntley. It was just really bad for those guys. They had it tough. I think Tyreek Hill wasn't a bad pick. He's still a great wide receiver in the NFL, but it obviously didn't really pan out this year. But you could have predicted that he was still going to be a dog. But running backs, I don't think any like fantasy experts would have said Saquon Barkley is the undisputed number 1 guy. And then you got Derrick Henry, who's having a phenomenal year, who's scoring touchdowns in 90% of the games. And that's another guy who was projected in the 2nd round. And that was one that I said it from the beginning of the year. I didn't think it would help the Ravens. And I've been completely wrong. I say it every week. This is the one that surprises me the most. I don't think that Derrick Henry was going to make them a speedier offense. I thought they needed more speed. I thought they needed a guy like Devon Achane, but they knew they need a physical guy to complement Lamar, and they got it. Ravens right now, I wouldn't say it's a skid, but they don't look as dominant as they've been in the earlier parts of the season. Is Lamar Jackson still going to be the MVP? I think so. It could be Josh Allen, the way he's been playing recently, but I think it is still Lamar Jackson. He carries that team. It doesn't matter who he's got out there. He's going to make spectacular plays. He's going to run the ball if he needs to, but he proves it with his arm every week, especially, Zay Flowers. He's a good wide receiver. I'd like him as a number 2 receiver on the Steelers, but I just don't think he's a number 1 guy. Maybe he will be eventually. Right now I think he's only in his 2nd year. I mean, you look at guys like Antonio Brown in their 2nd year, they weren't doing stuff that Zay Flowers was doing. There's no reason that Zay Flowers can't be an Antonio Brown type. Right now he's not, though. I just don't think they have enough weapons to make the Super Bowl, to win the Super Bowl. Chiefs right now, I saw a very interesting stat this week that there are only about 4 teams, I think 4 or 5 teams in the NFL that have not scored over 30 points in a game this season. Now, listen, they might score 30 against the Browns right now. I'm recording this while they're up 14-0. Oh, they almost picked off Jameis Winston for a second time in this game. They might score 30 today against the Browns. But prior to this matchup against the Browns this week, they have not scored more than 30 points. The other teams are teams with 1 or 2 wins. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence in the Chiefs. If I was the Bills, if I was the Steelers, if I was the Texans even, I wouldn't be scared of this team right now. If you know that you can go out there and you can score more than 24 points, I think you know that you have a good shot. And the way that the Steelers offense has been humming, the way that the Bills offense especially, I don't think that the Chiefs can beat the Bills in the playoffs the way they've been playing. Their offense just is not there. Travis Kelce is their number one guy. He's getting the majority of the receiving yards. I think losing Rashee Rice, really, really critical, really, really crucial to that team. I think it's going to come back to bite them pretty soon. We're just going to have to wait and see for the playoffs because they're going to be a lock. They're going to make a run or two. They're going to beat that 7 seed. But right now, the Chiefs, they're the team to beat. But again, if I'm the Steelers, if I'm the Bills, I'm not afraid of them. All right, we'll be right back on Behind Enemy Lines for the second segment where I'll be recapping my experience at the Steelers versus Browns game in Week 14. We'll be right back after the break.
Tired of these old fogies and their dials and knobs and 108.3s? Who needs all that jazz? Just open up your phone and head to the App Store, download Live 365, and punch in WSRR. That's right, only 4 letters and just a click away.
Welcome back to Behind Enemy Lines on WSRR Radio. Make the switch. We're nationally local. You know where to find us on the WSRR Radio. You're listening to us here. Pittsburgh Steelers versus Cleveland Browns. Week 14. What a game. Now, if you're a Browns fan, you might not have been saying that. It was 27-14. Jameis Winston, 24 for 41, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Russell Wilson, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns on 15 completions, 26 attempts. Not great performance play from these guys. Going into this one, I was very worried. I will not lie to you. I was actually terrified about this game. And the reason why was George Pickens. And it's the same reason that I'm worried about the Steelers-Eagles game today when I'm recording this. When you're listening to this, you might be thinking, yeah, you should have been worried because George Pickens is a guy that the Steelers need in their offense. He's the guy that is the bread and butter, the guy that makes this ship roll. But somehow the Steelers found a way in this Cleveland Browns game to score points. It was a tight game. It was 7-3 after the first quarter. Browns were winning. And I was like, man, this is going to be a tough game. This is going to be a gritty divisional matchup. Next thing I know, we're in the third quarter and we're up 27-7. I just don't know. Russell Wilson, and maybe it's Mike Tomlin, but I think it's more Russell Wilson. He just finds ways to score. It's not going to look pretty. It's not going to look good, but it's sneaky. It's like, man, we just got a field goal there. Oh, well, he just scored a touchdown. Like things just move quick. And with this defense, it moves even quicker. Quick turnovers, quick scoring. I mean, everyone's kind of getting the ball here. Najee Harris had a rushing touchdown. Pat Freiermuth had a receiving touchdown. Van Jefferson had a receiving touchdown. And Boswell knocked a field goal, a 54-yarder in this game in the second quarter. I think that was the dagger right there. Going up 13-7 into the second half, it was big for the Steelers. They needed that momentum. They had to get off to a hot start. And they didn't exactly in the first, but they pulled it together. They started figuring things out. I was very, very impressed with Najee Harris and almost more impressed with Jaylen Warren being that complementary piece. He could go out there, get physical yards. He could go out there, get a nice reception, and make it sometimes big plays. Jaylen Warren is a guy that you need to keep. Najee Harris, I hope that the Steelers are able to keep him. I just don't think it's happening. The numbers weren't pretty in this game for him. 16 carries, 53 yards, 3.5 yards, 3.3 yards per carry, It wasn't great. Even you could argue that Nick Chubb had a better game than him. He did have one big breakaway on his 11 carries for 48 yards, averaging 4.4 yards a carry. Unfortunately, Nick Chubb, it's his last year in Cleveland. I'd love to see them keep him. He's probably one of my favorite players in the AFC North. Jameis is up there too. Jameis, Chubb, Lamar Jackson. Love those guys. Hate the teams that they play for, but love what they represent. Love how they play the game. Love just their character, especially Jameis. This last Hard Knocks episode, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but Jameis just came across as such a genuine dude. He always has, but he's just a class act. And I wish nothing for the best. It honestly hurts seeing him, struggle at times. I do think there's potential there. I do think that he'll get another chance somewhere. That's not Cleveland. I wish that they could keep him, but unfortunately, we know the situation. We've talked about the situation every single week. Jameis Winston is not the answer. He's not the future. There's too much money in Deshaun Watson. That's the number one issue, and we talk about it every week, so we won't get into that. We'll talk about the positives right now for the Cleveland Browns, and I think the biggest one, most obvious one, is Jerry Jeudy. Going for a 1,000-yard season right now. Coming out of Alabama, I thought he would have had 1,000-yard season every year of his career, but he finally gets it done, and it's because of Jameis Winston. He's been feeding him. He's been finding him. It's his guy. I hope it sticks around. Jerry Jeudy is a very talented wide receiver who deserves a lot of success. In this game, he had 5 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. He's a great player. He's fun to watch too. Alabama wide receivers, they just produce. And Jerry Jeudy was one that looked like kind of like the ugly duckling. You got guys that have come out of Alabama every single year who have produced in the NFL, and Jerry Jeudy just was not living up to that hype. And right now, he's outperforming Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith was a Heisman winning wide receiver at Alabama. Right now, to the end of the season, I'd take Jerry Jeudy. Now, next season, if we start over, Devontae is so talented. I'm a huge fan. Jerry Jeudy looking really, really good. I'm going to have to maybe take a flyer on him in fantasy next year. I think I've drafted him almost every year that he's been in the league, and he's always been a disappointment. But this year, he's been great. He's been really fun to watch. Now, let's just talk about that experience at Acrisure Stadium. Lucas was at both games this season that the Steelers and Browns played. He was at the one in Cleveland 2 weeks ago, and he was at Acrisure Stadium. So I'm interested to hear on the backside of this episode what he thinks. If you're just tuning in, Lucas is in Florida right now, but he'll be back on the backside of this episode to talk about the Steelers and Browns episode. But right now, it's just me, Dom Farrow, here on the mic on Behind Enemy Lines, WSRR Radio. Make sure that you call in. If you were at the game or if you're watching the game, just let us know your experience. How do you think the Steelers fans were reacting? How did it look on TV? Were the Browns fans representing? Did they come out and show their pride, or have they given up on the year? But call in 216-859-8699. We won't tell. All right. Behind Enemy Lines here, talking about that experience at the Browns-Steelers game, Week 14. Acrisure Stadium, really, really fun place. I'm interested to hear what Lucas has said or what he's going to say, because he said he's never been to Acrisure Stadium before. He'd never seen a Steelers game there. It's an interesting environment, and I think it's different. I've actually never been to another NFL game at another NFL stadium, but there's just something in my heart that makes me know that this stadium, the history of this team is different. You walk around there, you see like legends' names like Franco Harris, Mean Joe Green, Lynn Swann, Terry Bradshaw. I mean, the list goes on and on. You see these guys' names all over the place, hanging up. And then you see the terrible towels, of course. There's an entire history with that. Myron Cope, Pittsburgh radio legend. You're listening to the radio here. You're supporting the local stuff. Keep supporting it, because radio is where legends are made, like Myron Cope and the terrible towel. It's got some power to it, but it's just a historical feel to that stadium. And sometimes I think maybe they can get a little too historical. They do this thing before the games now. They've been doing it for the last 2 years. It's called the Pittsburgh Polka. And the Pittsburgh Polka is a song apparently that they did, I think, in the 70s. And it's kind of this corny song, it's like, it's a polka. There's horns and stuff. It's like, offense. It's like cheer on the Steelers. It's just like, it's really old school. And I could see, like, if you're not a Steelers fan, if you like aren't like a student of the game, if you don't know the history of this team, you could probably like be like, man, this is really corny. Why do they keep on doing this? They do it after they score a touchdown. Listen, I love the Steelers as much as the biggest fan in the world. I love them to death. But it's not as cool as like the fly, Eagles, fly. That's way cooler. That's way better than the Pittsburgh Polka. It's just too old. It's like, man, we're a little out of touch here. Can we get something hype? They do play Black and Yellow a lot. They do play, new songs. They play some Mac Miller, but Pittsburgh Polka is one that I could see being like outsider fans being like, what in the world is this? Like laughing out loud at it. But yeah, so that's what they play before the game. But then obviously from there, it's just like, come on. The Steelers fans are loud. They're the best in the league, in my opinion. They're respectful. I hope Lucas had a good experience. I hope they all treated him kindly. But yeah, I had no issues with the fans around me. The people were loud. And of course, the Renegade. If you've never seen Renegade at Acrisure Stadium or Heinz Field, then you don't know what you're missing, because it's a very, very special experience in football. I wouldn't say it's the best like song at a sporting event. I haven't seen a lot of them, like Enter Sandman. But I've been to Penn State. I've seen Penn State games. There's nothing at Penn State that is better than Renegade. I've never been to a whiteout game, but I can promise you, when that screen goes black and you know what time it is, you know that's Renegade time, nothing gets you more excited than seeing that. I mean, is the song great? Would I listen to it in my free time? No. But when it comes on and it's at the perfect time when the defense needs a big stop, nothing better. Nothing better than that in the world. Now, Renegade, it's been around for a while. The first time they did it, defense made a big play, so they stuck with it. And there is some magic to it. Look it up. Look it up, like the stats behind Renegade. Because it turns out that there's statistically more turnovers after that song is played than at any point in the game. There's some magic, and you can tell right now that the Steelers got some magic. 10-3. 10-3 in this week, in week 15, going against the Eagles. Like I mentioned earlier in this segment, not super confident. A.J. Brown is a guy who scares me, but what makes me feel confident is that there's a rift. There's a serious rift between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. They've got some beef that no one really knows the full truth behind. No one knows all the details. But from what I've heard, these guys don't like each other, and right now, they've got a serious disconnect. You look at the stats, A.J. Brown really has been the only guy out there. Devontae Smith has been banged up a little bit. I think today Devontae might pop off. I think he might have a game. But as far as A.J. Brown, there's something going on between him and Jalen Hurts, and I think, and I've seen it. I've seen fans. They're turning against Jalen Hurts, and I don't know if it's happened in the locker room as well. But just based on the rift between these two guys, there's something serious there, and that gives me some confidence that maybe that can throw them off a little bit. Another thing that makes me feel confident is Saquon Barkley. Now, while you're listening to this on Monday morning at 10 a.m., you might be saying, haha, Saquon Barkley's the man, but I don't think Saquon Barkley is going to do the same stuff against the Steelers that he's been doing all year. I just don't think it's going to happen. Maybe he'll pop off for a 20-yard rush once or twice. But he's not going over 100 yards in this game. And I think that when you look down at the end of the season, when he's only 30, 40 yards away from the all-time record, you're going to be like, man, the Steelers, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, they did that. They kept him from getting that. So Eric Dickerson better thank those guys when it happens today, because Steelers are locking them up. But Pittsburgh Steelers in this one, they're underdogs. They're 5.5-point underdogs here. It's in Philadelphia, so I take that with a grain of salt. There is in, I think that it really is a 3-point game. It's going to be a difference of field goal, and who's going to get the field goals? Chris Boswell. So give me the Steelers here. They're going to cover the plus 5.5. Over under 43.5. I'm going to take the over now. On this final few minutes here that we got together, I'm going to do my Monday night preview. It's the Chicago Bears versus the Monday Vikings. Now, tonight, going into this one, I'm personally thinking that the Vikings are a team to beat in the NFL. They're favorites to win the Super Bowl. Not the number one favorites, but they're up there. They're a top 5 team to win the Super Bowl next to teams like the Ravens, Chiefs, Bills. They've got better odds than the Steelers right now. I think that's blasphemous. But regardless, 7-point favorites against the Bears, who they've been playing well. Thanksgiving Day, they played against the Lions. They kept a really competitive game. They should have won that one. And there's been countless others this season where the Bears probably should have pulled through. Last week, week 14 versus the 49ers, the Bears lost 38-13. Going into that one, I thought the Bears would keep being competitive. They obviously didn't. 49ers still are a good team. Brock Purdy still is a good player. But Bears, I think, cover this one. I'm going with +7, Bears to cover. Justin Jefferson, I think, will have a good game, but it won't be enough. Man, I'm going back and forth with this one. Because then I think about Brian Flores and the effect that he's had on that defense. It might be too much for a rookie, Caleb Williams, and that soft offensive line. 7 points is a lot in the NFL, though. Over under 43.5. I mean, based on that logic, I'll take the under, and I'll take, lock it in, I'll take the Vikings to cover. Okay, that's the Monday night preview. That is my recap of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns Week 14 game. I wish you all good luck in the fantasy football playoffs. If you didn't make it, good luck next season. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's show, but you'll be hearing Lucas on the backside of this. I'll hand it off to him real soon. But behind enemy lines here, we are supported by our great sponsors. Make sure that you check out Synergy Music Studios based off Chicago. Synergy Music Studio offers a diverse array of musical services specially crafted to meet our clients' needs. From recording to mixing and production, discover how we can bring your vision to life at synergymusicstudio.com. And even if you're not in Chicago, they can get your music, your album, they can get anything ready through their reamping services. They'll record your audio tracks, and they'll adjust the tone, sound characteristics. They'll make sure that they achieve the desired sonic texture and enhance the overall quality of your music production. So make sure you check out Synergy Music Studio at synergymusicstudio.com. All right, behind enemy lines, halfway through, here comes Lucas.
Thank you, Dom, for throwing it over to me. This is Lucas Durazio, and thank you, folks, for listening to Behind Enemy Lines. We have to apologize for a little bit of a maybe unorthodox style of recording today. Dom was right. He said that I was in the sunshine state of Florida, getting some Florida oranges, working on my suntan, trying to boost my stoke a little bit in the sunshine. Got some good weather down there. I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that vacation later. But yeah, a little bit of poor planning on our part. So I appreciate you guys for sticking with us here. A little half and half podcast radio show. And I'm sorry that you guys had to listen to Dom pretty much just hype up the Steelers and Pittsburgh for 25 minutes. So you guys got a little bit of a taste of what it's been like for me over the last about 6 years, truly being behind enemy lines as a Clevelander living in Pittsburgh. Just hearing Yinzers talk about, Acrisure, Heinz Stadium, or Heinz Field it was, excuse me. I'm sure Dom would kick my ass if he heard me say that. But, Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium, there's nothing like it. Go to the North Shore. You want to park downtown, but then cross the bridge over and catch the game and catch the Stillers, and, get your terrible towels ready because it gets pretty nutty and pretty wild because Renegade gets playing, and it's freaking awesome. I actually have to disagree with Dom on one thing. He said the Pittsburgh Polka was a little bit cheesy. I liked it. I was rocking with it. And honestly, it was kind of like a throwback vibe of like he said, like in the 70s, some horns playing and stuff like that. And kind of, tapping into the Polish heritage of this region, like a Midwest, Pittsburgh type of vibe. People who eat pierogies and do stuff like that. But I liked it. I kind of was... Like I turned to the guy who I had with me who also lives in Pittsburgh with me, like a friend, and I said, I rock with this. I'm not sure what this is. I've never heard it before, but I kind of liked it. And as much as it pained me to say wearing my Peyton Hillis jersey to support something that the Pittsburgh Steelers were doing, I was like, I kind of really rock with the throwback song, the Pittsburgh Polka. I didn't know that was what it was called until hearing it from Dom. But, unfortunately, Browns fell to the Steelers last week, pushed them to 3-9. I'm recording this on December 15th, Sunday. The Browns are currently losing 14-7 to the Chiefs. And actually, Dorian Thompson-Robinson has just been checked into the game. Fortunately for me, I didn't really stress about watching the game this week because I pretty much knew they were going to lose. I had an open house to do. I just tried to distract myself. No matter how bad the Browns season is, you try to watch, but when it was the Chiefs, I just didn't want to hear them, glazing Patrick Mahomes the entire game, talking about how Travis Kelce was from Cleveland and how much we'd love to have him back here. So I just tuned out this week. And unfortunately, like I said, it looks like that was probably a good decision as they were down 21-7 last time that I checked, late in the fourth. But yeah, I went to Acrisure Stadium last Sunday, got to watch the Browns and Steelers, got to watch both Browns-Steelers games this season. Obviously, two completely different stories. Browns won the first one in Cleveland and dropped this one in Pittsburgh. And I'll tell you what, it was good. It was a good experience. It was a good atmosphere in Acrisure. I had really good seats, second row. The people around me were mostly polite. Mostly, I got them from a season ticket holder, so mostly sitting around season ticket holders as well. And, pretty much no one really completely went at me, but the guys sitting to my left and in front of me really were fully set on heckling Corey Bojorquez, who, if you don't know, he's our punter. They fully made it their job to try to quote unquote get in his head. And like I said, it's our punter. All right, take it easy. The guy in front of me had his phone out and was reading off every team that Corey Bojorquez had ever played for. And he was like, "Oh man, if you didn't play for this team and play so bad, you wouldn't be here for Cleveland, and you know it," and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, actually, Corey Bojorquez has had a really good season as our punter. He's played very well, and as well as you can play as a punter. He's flipped the field very, very good for us this year. So I don't know if I'd be talking shit to him, but whatever. Speaking of special teams, Dustin Hopkins really dropped the ball in this one. 2 missed field goals before the half that really would have put the Browns in the game and made it a 1-score game. And at the end of the game there as well, there was a garbage time touchdown that made it a 2-score game, but it was kind of still out of it. But if he would have made those 2, it would have been a 1-score game. Browns are still in it. Jameis was, defense got to stop. Jameis really played all right. A couple of bad throws, a late interception that really killed all their chances. Like I said, pretty much their chances were gone at that point anyway, with the missed field goals and all of that. But overall, a pretty good experience. Didn't get exactly heckled too bad. Honestly, everyone was pretty good. I unfortunately heard a story of a Steelers fan, a young girl that I know from college who went to the Browns and Steelers game in Cleveland and did get heckled pretty bad. And I just have to say, come on, guys. As a Browns fan, you love to hate a Steeler fan and you love to hate Steelers, but it got pretty nasty, especially at a college-age girl. And her friend, who was also, a young adult woman. So, if I was ready for the heckling to come at me because, I'm a 25-year-old guy wearing a Browns jersey in Pittsburgh, and I would have been okay with handling it. I got a couple of things, but, every time I kind of just said, hey, you guys lost a game 2 weeks ago to a 3-win team. And that's all I really needed. But let's try to clean it up and be a little kinder. But one thing that I really noticed about this game, and maybe it was because 2 weeks ago the Browns beat the Steelers, Jameis Winston is living rent-free in Steelers fans' heads. I mean, he was the topic of conversation with everyone around us. The one guy was like, man, who could like Jameis Winston? I was like, well, I mean, he's a Heisman winning quarterback, and he seems to right now be one of the most liked guys in the NFL. And everyone, man, Jameis Winston stinks. He's awful. He throws terrible ball. He's the worst. And I'm like, well, he won a game 2 weeks ago against you guys. And then he threw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. Of course, 3 picks, and 2 of them were pick sixes against the Broncos. But, the week after beating the Steelers, had a career game against the Broncos on primetime. But the bottom line is that Jameis Winston is in Pittsburgh's head rent-free. They were, every chance they got, I'm not sure what their tactic here was, what the media team's tactic was, but they were just zooming the camera in on the back of his jersey, 5 Winston, that's what you saw, up on the big screen, almost at all times, every time that the Browns are about to snap the ball. Like, they were zooming in on Jameis Winston's back, showing just his jersey, not even his head was in it, and everyone's booing. Oh, boo, Jameis Winston, he stinks because he beat us 2 weeks ago. And I was perplexed, really, by how a guy who everyone in the stands was saying was so bad, they were so concerned with him. You got to love Jameis. He's given us a fighting chance. He's bringing his best every week. Even if there's not much to play for anymore. I think that we kind of talked about the future of Jameis Winston in Cleveland a little bit a week or two ago, and I think fully he deserves a chance to come back and fight for a starting position next year. They've talked about drafting a quarterback this offseason. I'm not sure if I'm really sold on the quarterbacks in this draft, another thing that we've talked about on this show. But I think that Jameis has earned the right and, he has the backing of the city of Cleveland to come back, and we'll talk about that more after the break. This is Behind Enemy Lines on WSRR Radio.
Hi, this is Melissa.
And hey, it's Matt.
Hi guys, my name is Ari.
Coming at you from Synergy Music Studio. Come through to a Synergy Naked session.
Synergy Naked is a live performance recording, also captured on video. Look for our releases on YouTube at Synergy Music Studio.
We're located on the south side near Chicago. Passing through.
Hit up our DMs on Instagram at Synergy Music Studio. Rock hard.
Welcome back to Behind Enemy Lines right here on WSRR Radio, your nationally local station, meaning that we play your local bands nationally, and we are supported by other local companies such as GenericClothes.com. Nobody cares about the details. Get to the point at GenericClothes.com. Don't sell out to the big brand clothing empires and their prices. Make a statement at their expense with GenericClothes.com, selling shirts with some of their best-selling slogans such as Music Band, I'd Like to Leave Now, Beer, Sports Team, Company I Work For, Antagonist, Shirt, and one of my favorite, Pants. All right, so it is December 15th. The Browns, like I said, losing right now to the Kansas City Chiefs. They put in Dorian Thompson-Robinson over Jameis Winston at the end of this game, late in the fourth quarter. Game was pretty much out of hand. And with this will also push them to 3-11. 3 games remaining in the 2024 NFL season. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, still on his rookie contract, has something to prove, I think. Still could be, maybe even a starter for Cleveland in the future, but I think he could be a solid backup at least. As much as that sounds like almost having nothing, the NFL has proved more and more over the last couple of years that having a good backup is super important to being a good team. Over a 17-week NFL season, injuries happen. It's a physical game. It's almost guaranteed that at some point you're going to play more than one quarterback throughout the year. I mean, look at the Browns the past 2 years. Deshaun Watson obviously has been unable to stay healthy. Last year they played Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Tyler Huntley, Joe Flacco, Deshaun Watson, as I mentioned, and even at the end of the season brought in Jared Stidham, I think it was. Of course, that was kind of, playoff was already locked up, garbage time game, but 5 quarterbacks played for the Browns this year. Already 3 quarterbacks have played for the Browns in Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, and now Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And you see it all over the league. Look at Jacksonville, who right now is locked up in a dogfight late in the fourth quarter, tied at 45. Mac Jones has come in. And, even though he isn't maybe an elite NFL starter, that's a guy you can lean on and know that, if Trevor Lawrence goes down the way that he did with a gruesome hit against the Texans where he looked like he probably lost some brain cells and took a quick little nap on the field, you need a guy that you can go to that can run the offense. You saw it also this year in Indianapolis going to who else but Joe Flacco. And he got to win some games there in Indianapolis. They went into this week being 6-7, with a fighting chance. And, a big part of that was having Joe Flacco be able to step in and, run the offense efficiently and win some games. So I think that Dorian Thompson-Robinson, it'll be interesting to see what the Browns do these last 3 weeks. As I mentioned, I think that Jameis Winston has already done enough to prove that he deserves to have another shot in Cleveland, to come back next year, re-sign on at least another 1-year contract, and challenge for a starting job with Cleveland against Deshaun Watson. That is, if Deshaun Watson, maybe doesn't medically retire, is good to go by the beginning of next season, which, in all honesty, he likely won't be with an Achilles tear. I think that it's very likely that Deshaun Watson doesn't come back fully healthy, is cleared for play until halfway through next season. I don't think that would be out of the realm of possibility. But as I said, I think he's done enough, Jameis Winston, to deserve to come back. Now the question is, has Dorian Thompson-Robinson done enough? There's so much on the practice. There's only so much that you can see from a quarterback on the practice field, and how much potential can carry them. But at some point, he's got to get live reps. He's got to get more and more live reps. He obviously got a good amount last year. Started that game against the Steelers, which, again, they won. I hate to keep throwing it in Steelers fans' faces, but a quote-unquote for them, terrible team split with them last season with Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback in the game that they won. He also started against the Broncos last year and took a really gruesome hit. He went out in that game. He's gotten a good amount of snaps in his NFL career, but he needs more. And I think he just needs to keep being able to prove that he can be an NFL quarterback. And even if it isn't in a starting role, having a backup guy that you can go to and lean on. He obviously has some of the intangibles that you talk about in a quarterback. Like, he's one of the better athletes at the quarterback position in the league. And I think Cleveland and Kevin Stefanski knows that, because they use him every once in a while in running situations. They like to use him and use his athleticism to get him out on the edge. But, the mental aspect of being an NFL quarterback is so much greater than any physical aspect can be. I mean, you look at guys like, obviously, the first one to come to mind is Tom Brady. I mean, you watch his 40, you watch the way that he runs pretty much every time that he's scrambled in his career, and it looks like, my 60-year-old father running around there. But he's got a good arm, and he had the mental to where it didn't matter how unathletic he was. If he had a clean pocket, he could put balls where they needed to be, and he knew how to read a defense. And obviously, for him, that's kind of underselling him, because he ended up being the greatest of all time. But I think that just goes to show you, again, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he may be 100 times the athlete running that Tom Brady was and is, but can he break down an NFL defense? And again, we don't need him to be Tom Brady. You just need him to be a reliable backup that if Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson, or if you bring someone in a draft goes down, that he can come in and run an offense. And I think that that's what the Browns probably should do with at least 2 of the final 3 games in this 2024 season. Dom had mentioned in the opening segment of this show that Travis Hunter was named the 2024 Heisman winner. We'll get into a little bit more college football talk right now, as the first round of the college football playoff comes up this weekend, December 20th to the 21st. Kicks off on Friday, December 20th, with number 10 Indiana at number 7 Notre Dame. I think this one's going to be a really interesting game, because Indiana hasn't really played anyone all year. They played one big game. It was Ohio State. They lost in pretty disappointing fashion to Hoosiers fans. Notre Dame, same way. Haven't played anyone all year except for really one big game, and it was against Texas A&M, which they won. They're also a one-loss team, just like Indiana, but their loss was to a MAC school in Northern Illinois. I think it's going to be really interesting to see this one shape up. Notre Dame's other one big game was against Army this year, who looked really good all season, but had a bad loss to Notre Dame. And then this past week, lost to Navy in the annual Army-Navy game. Navy came out. I mean, Navy's good. Don't get me wrong. Navy has had another academy school that really exceeded expectations this season, and including in this game, exceeded expectations and took down Army. I think it'll be an interesting game. I think Notre Dame being at home will obviously give them a little bit of an edge. Notre Dame doesn't have a great history with the college football playoff, but they've won their last 2 bowl games last year against Oregon State and the year before with South Carolina. So Marcus Freeman, their head coach, has been pretty good with them in the postseason in terms of winning bowl games. Indiana, we'll see how Curtis Rourke, their transfer quarterback from Ohio University, plays in this one. Tons of transfers on that Indiana team, which I think is super interesting to see just the way that the portal has, affected that program. The next day, Saturday, December 21st, number 11, SMU at number 6, Penn State at noon. I think this game's going to be really interesting. Penn State, I honestly thought they were going to get smacked in the Big Ten championship to Oregon. They put up a better fight than I thought they would, and it was a touchdown game. I don't think Penn State really has a great chance in this playoff, but I do think they'll win this game against SMU. I think SMU's good. They've had a good season in the ACC this year. Had that big game against Pitt that a lot of Pittsburgh fans remember, because Pitt was rolling, went into this huge clash with SMU, primetime game, and SMU took them out to the shed. And the Mustangs were really rolling. But I think that Penn State has a little bit more big game experience in this one. They're a Big Ten team. They've had some guys who have been there for a longer time. And I think that Penn State will take this one. The next game at 4 p.m. will be Clemson against number 5 Texas. I think Clemson and Dabo Swinney are the most unlikable team in college football. They lost to Syracuse late in the season. I think Texas is going to take them. And, we saw Texas play Michigan early in the season, and it was, again, hyped as a big matchup, SEC versus Big Ten, and they just spanked Michigan. Of course, Michigan ended up only being a 7-win team this season, one of them being against their rival Ohio State, which brings us to the night game of Tennessee at Ohio State, number 9 at number 8, which I think is going to be super interesting. I'm worried about Ohio State as a quote-unquote Ohio State fan. I'm not sold on Will Howard as much as some other Ohio State fans are. Some of them think that it's quote-unquote blasphemous that he wasn't even talked about in the Heisman running. But I don't think he deserved it. A late game mishap against Oregon kind of cost them there, where he tried to run and slide instead of getting down a little bit earlier and getting a field goal. Blah blah blah. Long story short, and then of course they blew it against Michigan. He played terrible. Offense looked terrible. Defense stood up pretty well and gave the offense enough chances to win that game, and they had no opportunity to. They have 2 of the best backs in the nation in Dravion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, and they had zero ability to run the ball against Michigan. I think Ryan Day should probably be fired, and if he doesn't win this game against Tennessee on Saturday, I think it will be the nail in the coffin that gives him the pink slip and gets him out of there. Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator, might be a good name for next. Mike Vrabel, who's currently with the Browns, may be a good name for next Ohio State head coach. But Ryan Day hasn't beat Michigan, and that's really what you got to do at Ohio State to keep your job. That's kind of what it comes down to: competing for national championships and beating Michigan. And I think those two are kind of tit for tat on which one's more important. I think it would kind of be hard for an Ohio State fan to decide which one would be more important, which I think is why it'll be super interesting if they make it to a national championship, because they still lost to Michigan, and that is the huge blemish, obviously, on their resume. So yeah, it should be a really interesting college football playoff, the first 12-team playoff in college football history. it is somewhat of a good omen for Ohio State. The first 4-team college football playoff, of course, was won by Ohio State back in 2016. So, maybe every time there's an expansion, Ohio State has a good year and makes it happen. And that year they were also underdogs. They lost J.T. Barrett, Cardale Jones came in at quarterback, Ezekiel Elliott exploded. That was a team that people counted out a ton too. Had to play Alabama and then Marcus Mariota, Heisman winner, and Oregon in the national championship. And they pulled that one out. So it should be interesting going into this weekend. Dom gave you his Monday night preview of the Vikings and Bears. I think the Vikings are going to run away with it in that one. I think that the Bears, the wheels are falling off the track a little bit. So I would definitely take Vikings money line as my lock of the week. Not 100% sure on the spread. I'll take the last 45 seconds to talk a little bit about my vacation. My nephew, who was down there at the same time as us, absolutely had a terrible week. Threw up about 6 times on the plane ride down there. Had meltdown after meltdown. He's 3.5. So, he's not that age that nothing pleases them and, it's their way or the highway. I watched him sprint full force and jump into a sliding glass door that I had closed about 45 seconds earlier, which was completely on me. So if he grows up with a crooked nose just like me, he can blame me for it. Thank you guys for listening to me and Dom in this unorthodox recording. Thank you, Dom, for holding it together at the first half of the show. And thank you guys for listening to Behind Enemy Lines right here on WSRR Radio.
The preceding program is a StylesRebelRadio.com production.